Hi, Charles SirBookSage here, and I wanted to talk about a key decision HBO made and Amazon made in their respective House of the Dragon and Rings of Power shows that I think is a foundational reason why House of the Dragon so far is a good show and Rings of Power so far is not a good show. So I wanted to go over that right now. Both HBO and Amazon started from a similar starting point, basically. You have HBO took George R.R. Martin's, let me see, where is that? George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood, Volume 1, and they looked through it. It's a history of the House Targaryen's rule over Westeros, or at least the first big chunk of it. And they combed through it and then found the Dance of the Dragons particular event and decided that would make a great TV show. Let's tell that story here. So it's a part of Fire and Blood that has a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. And they hired good showrunners, they hired good writers, and so far they've done a really good job of taking a very, very summarized set of events and fleshing it out into like a really interesting and fun show. And they've really done a great job as well, the writers and the actors, in bringing these characters from a summarized presentation of them on the page to fully fleshed out characters. Big shout out in particular to Paddy Considine as King Viserys. Of course, the great Matt Smith as Daemon Targaryen. And is it Millie Alcock, who plays the young Rhaenyra. These three in particular, to me, are and the actor who plays Corlys Velaryon. Those four are the real standouts so far. Let's contrast that with the decision Amazon made. Amazon, starting point, was a summarized version of the Second Age from Tolkien's Legendarium, and roughly a 3,500 year period of time. And instead of looking across this 3,500 year timeline at all the major events that happened and picking one of those and saying, this is what our show is going to be about, they instead decided to pluck all these individual disparate moments spread out over 3,500 years, plus grab some things that are actually happening in the Third Age, and then mash all that together to try to then come up with some sort of actual story. And that's a lot harder to do than just fleshing out a summarized particular story like HBO is doing. Amazon could have done that if they picked any one of the major Second Age events, but they didn't want to do that. They chose to just take stuff scattered really over 5,000 years if you count the stuff they took from the Third Age and put it here in the Second Age, and mashed it together to try to come up with something. And unfortunately, this no actual offense at any of the people involved in the show, but they're just not skilled enough to take that and turn it into a quality product. At least not yet. Now you may say, Charles, SirBookSage, you're being hasty. It's only 3 episodes in. Pretty early to start really trashing a show. And it's 3 episodes, yes, but in an 8-episode season. So we're already a third of the way in. The episode airing tomorrow morning is going to be the halfway point in the show. And while there's a lot of individual events that are happening in Rings of Power, there's no actual like concrete story yet. There's just things happening. And things happening, while they might be individually interesting things, don't make an actual story. So episode 4, it's time for them to really step up their game and start honing in on the actual story that this first season is supposed to be telling. That's the critical difference. That's the foundational difference between why House of the Dragon is a good show. They made the smart logistical construct choice, and then hired people who could pull that off. Amazon made a bad logistical construct choice, and then gave it to people who are just not experienced enough to make it into a really good show. Another thing that HBO did really, really smartly is naming the show House of the Dragon instead of the Dance of the Dragons. By naming it House of the Dragon, they can tell more of the stories contained in Fire and Blood. They can tell this whole dance from beginning to end, and if the show reaches the heights of the original Game of Thrones show and sticks the landing, and people demand more and the studio demands more, because they named the show House of the Dragon, they can just pick another one of the major events contained in Fire and Blood that has a beginning, middle, and end to it, and tell that as well. They can continue on more House Targaryen stories. And House of the Dragon is a perfectly composed umbrella name for any Targaryen monarchy story that they want to pick from the volume. So really, really smartly done. Rings of Power, you've basically put yourself in a box where your show actually has to be about the Rings of Power. And we're probably looking like season 1 is not going to have any Rings of Power, not going to have its actual legitimate villain, though the villain is there, but just in disguise and not being revealed yet. So it's kind of challenging to mash stuff from 5,000 years together, again, counting some Third Age stuff they took, and then not have your central, item that the story's about, or your central villain that leads to the creation of these central items. So, kind of a really weird choice for season 1, but that's what Amazon went with. And again, some of the visuals are really nice. Some of the special effects are glaringly, noticeably special effects. I don't want to get into the specifics about the individual episodes. I have my video where I discuss episodes 1 and 2, and I think I'm going to watch episode 4 and then rewatch 3 and 4 and then make a discussion video and review video of episodes 3 and 4 as its own video as well. So I guess I'm going to do it in episode 1 and 2 video, episode 3 and 4 video, episode 5 and 6 video, episode 7 and 8 video. And I will be doing House of the Dragon videos as well. So after this Sunday's episode, it'll be, I think, episode 5. And then next week I'm going to rewatch all 5 episodes and start making my kind of review discussion videos about that show as well, because they're doing a really good job. The costuming on House of the Dragon is just exquisite. I mean, whoever they hire to do the costumes and armor design, I mean, with the few exceptions of, Daemon's, of course, dragon helm that you would never wear in a jousting thing, but, you can forgive that kind of flair for a TV show. But just the day-to-day wear at court is just really, really top-notch stuff. Whereas so far, the day-to-day wear in Rings of Power, it's kind of like, I don't know, this is probably a tropey comparison at this point, but it's kind of very CW, some of the costumes are just cheesy and cheap. They look like you just walked into a generic wardrobe shop on a studio and just took some, I need background costumes from any Rome set, and there you go. There's no distinctiveness to it. There's no, this is Numenor. This is man at his height. The Numenoreans are descendant of the Edain humans. If the Numenoreans sail from Numenor to Middle-earth and they go to Bronwyn's village, Tir Harad, again, the Numenoreans will stand out. I mean, drastically stand out. Just like the elves should drastically stand out, but in their own elven way. For example, the Numenoreans are very big, very tall people. They are, Elendil is described, depending upon what references you look at, somewhere between 6'9" and 7'11". So the Numenoreans are very, very tall people. Galadriel is 6'4", very tall among elven women, probably the tallest of the elven women in Arda. The Numenoreans would tower over her in general. And there's none of that in this show. I just don't understand the choices that they're making, because there's very distinct visuals that Tolkien provided, that Jackson did a good job of capturing in his own way, that this show just said, we're not going to bother. You know, there's no difference. Like, you can have Galadriel, Elendil, and Bronwyn standing next to each other, and if you weren't told one was an elf, one was a Numenorean, and one was just a Southlander or Midlander or whatever, would you have any idea who was who? No. And you should very visually, instantaneously know that's a high elf, that's a Numenorean, and that's one of the humans here in this like region of Middle Earth. It'd be pretty obvious. No one would have any doubts about who is who. And in the show, I mean, you'd never be able to tell the difference at all. This was not what this video is meant to be about. It was just really me doing just a comparison on that critical choice the two studios made in their logistical construct of their shows. And we're seeing the results of that. I filmed this in black and white because I was playing around with my various film settings and trying it out, and I didn't even think about putting it back in my normal, like, Eterna. So here's a black and white video for those who like the tech stuff. Fujifilm X-T3, XF35, F2, set at F2. This is Fujifilm's Acros with a G, Acros Green, black and white film simulation. And with that, I am Charles, this is SirBookSage. Happy reading.